Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to share with you concerning the history and celebration of the holiday of Hanukkah. Daniel chapters 2 and 8 contain the historical background describing events which ultimately led to a Jewish rebellion and the celebration of the holiday of Hanukkah. In Daniel chapter 2 and verse 1, the God of Israel gave Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, a dream that troubled him. In his dream, he was shown an image which personified a series of world rulers beginning with his kingdom of Babylon. These world powers would culminate in the second coming of Yeshua the Messiah, when he would set up his kingdom. In Daniel chapter 2 and verse 2, Nebuchadnezzar called for his magicians, astrologers, and sorcerers to tell him the dream that he had and to interpret that dream. If they were not able to do so, Nebuchadnezzar ordered that they would die. However, his magicians, astrologers, and sorcerers would not be able to tell Nebuchadnezzar his dream nor interpret it for him. In Daniel chapter 2 and verse 15, we are told that Daniel was told about this situation. Nebuchadnezzar even ordered that his high-ranking government advisors should be killed if Nebuchadnezzar was not told his dream and the meaning of that dream. This included Daniel. In Daniel chapter 2 and verse 19, Daniel prayed and was given the understanding of Nebuchadnezzar's dream by the God of Israel in a night vision. In his dream, Nebuchadnezzar was shown an image whose head was of fine gold. This represented the kingdom of Babylon. The image had breasts and arms of silver. This represented the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians, who would come and defeat the Babylonian Empire. The image had a thigh of brass. This represented the kingdom of Greece, who would defeat the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. In Daniel chapter 8, Daniel was given a dream regarding the kingdom that was to follow the kingdom of Babylon. These kingdoms were the kingdoms of Media-Persia and Greece. In Daniel chapter 8 and verse 3, Daniel was shown a ram with two horns. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 20, Daniel was given the interpretation that this ram represented the Media-Persia kingdom. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 5, Daniel was shown a goat which came from the west. It had a notable horn between his eyes. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 21, Daniel was given the interpretation that the goat represented the kingdom of Greece. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 7, the goat made war with the ram and defeated it. This was a prophecy that Greece would defeat the Media-Persian Empire. The notable horn of the goat in Daniel chapter 8 verse 6 was Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great lived from 365 BC to 323 BC. As a young boy, Alexander studied the writings of the Greek philosopher Aristotle. At age 20, Alexander became the king of the Greek state Macedonia. Later, he went to war and conquered the Media-Persian Empire. Alexander believed that the Greek culture could unify the world. He founded a new city in each country of his empire that would serve as a model for the furtherance of the Greek culture. Public buildings, gymnasiums, open-air theaters, the spread of Greek names, Greek dress, and a common language were all the byproducts of the rule of the Greek Empire. The spread of the Greek culture was known as Hellenism. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 8, we are told that when the goat was strong, that the great horn was broken. This referred to Alexander the Great, who died at the young age of 32. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 8, we are told that when the great horn was broken, meaning Alexander died, that 4 horns came up from him. When Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was divided among 4 generals. The 2 strongest generals were the Seleucids of Syria and the Ptolemies of Egypt. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 23, we are told that at the latter time of the reign of this Greek kingdom, that a king of fierce countenance would arise. From the Greek Seleucids of Syria came a ruler known as Antiochus Epiphanes IV. We are told about him in the extra biblical book of 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 10. Prior to the rise of Antiochus Epiphanes IV, around the year 180 BC, the Jews had jobs and traded commerce and were able to freely follow their faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to keep his Torah. At first, little changed under his reign. However, later Jews were gradually forced to violate precepts of their faith. In 167 BC, Antiochus IV ordered an idol to the Greek god Zeus to be erected in the temple at Jerusalem, and a pig was sacrificed upon the altar. 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 54 and 59. And this happened in the 25th day of the Jewish month of Kislev. Antiochus IV destroyed the vessels of the temple, including the golden altar, the candlestick, and the table of showbread. 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verses 21 through 23. Antiochus IV also forbid the keeping of the biblical Sabbath, the biblical feast days, as well as stopped the burnt offerings and drink offerings in the temple. 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 45. Furthermore, he forbid Jews to be circumcised, 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 48, and that they should eat pig and unclean food, 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 45. Antiochus IV made a decree, 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 41, that everyone in the Greek Empire should give up their own customs and completely accept and follow Greek culture, 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 42. For anyone who would not agree to follow Greek culture, it was punishable by death, 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 50. There were those among the Jewish people who agreed to follow the orders of Antiochus IV. 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 11, verse 15, and verse 43. These were known as Hellenistic Jews. For this reason, because they followed the evil decrees of Antiochus and tried to accept the Greek culture when it conflicted with the Torah and the ways of the God of Israel in the Bible, the Hellenistic Jews are called wicked in 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 11 and chapter 7 and verse 5. Interestingly enough, the evil decrees of Antiochus IV, which consisted of the following: 1. The people were not to follow the Torah. 2. They were not to keep the biblical Sabbath. 3. They were not to keep the biblical festivals. 4. They were not to circumcise their children. And 5. Sacrifices were not to be made in the temple. And finally, 6, that it was decreed that you would eat pig. Given that these are listed as the evil decrees of Antiochus IV, this is what most Christians accept today as New Testament faith in believing that Yeshua is the Messiah. One should ask the question, how did the evil decrees of Antiochus IV come to be accepted as the way in which Christians are to express their faith in Yeshua as the Messiah? Well, rather than accept these evil decrees, Mattathias, a Jewish priest, along with his 5 sons, led a rebellion against these decrees of Antiochus IV and fled into the wilderness. 1 Maccabees chapter 2 verses 1 and 2, verse 6 and verse 28. Yeshua referred to this event in Matthew in chapter 24 and verse 15 when he said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, which was a historical event, but Yeshua was also referring to the future and the events of the tribulation period. Therefore, we can understand that the things that happened that resulted in the celebration of Hanukkah is a prophecy of what will be happening in the end of days during the tribulation period. Mattathias commanded his sons to give their life for the covenant made with their fathers and for the Torah. 1 Maccabees chapter 2 verse 50. Mattathias died, and his son Judah became the new leader of the Jewish rebellion against Greece. By 165 BC, the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid monarchy was successful. The temple was liberated, 1 Maccabees chapter 4 verse 36, and there was the cleansing of the sanctuary and a rededication of the altar. 1 Maccabees chapter 4 verse 43 and 48, and this happened on the 25th day of Kislev, 1 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 52. The dedication of the altar was for 8 days, 1 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 56. Judas Maccabee and his brethren declared in 2 Maccabees chapter 10 verse 8 that the remembrance of the dedication of the altar should be kept yearly, 1 Maccabees chapter 4 verse 59, beginning on the 25th of Kislev. On the same day that the altar of the temple was originally desecrated, that would be the 25th of Kislev, is the same day that it was declared to be remembered, 2 Maccabees chapter 10 and verse 5. The joy of this dedication is likened to the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, or in Hebrew, Sukkot, 2 Maccabees chapter 10 and verse 5. Historians believe that the reason for the 8-day celebration is that the first Hanukkah was in effect a belated celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. During the revolt against Greece, the Jews were not able to celebrate Sukkot properly. Sukkot is also celebrated for 8 days. It is a holiday which the lighting of lamps played an important role in the Second Temple period, as we're told in the Jewish Talmud. The Jewish historian Josephus of the 1st century tells us that a popular name for the celebration of the festival was the Festival of Lights. In the Talmud, in Shabbat 21b, we are told that when the menorah in the temple went to be rededicated, that they only found enough ritually purified olive oil for 1 day. They lit the menorah with this 1-day supply of olive oil. However, the oil miraculously kept the menorah lit for 8 days. For this reason, it is a tradition that a candle is lit each night in the celebration of Hanukkah. This miracle mentioned in the Talmud is not mentioned in the book of Maccabees. There is a special menorah used to light Hanukkah lights known as a Hanukkah. In the Talmud, in Shabbat 21a, 2 customs are presented on how to light the Hanukkah. One custom is to light 8 lamps on the first night of Hanukkah and reduce the number each night. This was the custom of the Jewish rabbinical school of Shammai. The other custom is to light 1 lamp and increase the number on each night. This is the custom of the Jewish rabbinical school of Hillel. The accepted custom today is to increase the number of lamps lit each night. One of the best known symbols of Hanukkah is the dreidel. When the Greeks forbid the study and following of the Torah, the Jews would act like they were playing a game of dreidel when they believed that Greek soldiers were near. When it seemed like no one was watching, they would study the Torah. A dreidel is a 4-sided top with a Hebrew letter on each side. The 4 letters are Shin, He, Gimel, and Nun. The letters mean a great miracle happened there. In Israel, the dreidel letters are a bit different, and they mean a great miracle happened here. Hanukkah is mentioned in the New Testament in John chapter 10 and verse 22. Well, this is the background and history of the celebration of Hanukkah. When studying the history of Hanukkah, Christians should realize that it prophesies of the events of the tribulation when the Antichrist will demand that nations and individuals give up their own culture and customs and accept the New World Order and one world government. When this happens, will you be like the Maccabees, or will you be like the Hellenistic Jews? Well, until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.